II Heart of the Swarm Art and Technology panel. Please put your hands together and welcome to the stage members of the StarCraft II team.
All right, everybody, welcome to the 2011 StarCraft II Art and Tech panel. Thanks for coming. My name is Alan Dilling. I'm the lead artist on StarCraft II, and today we're going to show you some cool stuff we've been working on over the last year for Heart of the Swarm. First, I'll introduce you to our cool panel. We have Steve Provost, one of the next generation of younger artists at Blizzard. He's already made his mark. Basically, all the crazy, gooey, bloody deaths you've seen in the game, it's all his handiwork. Next, we have Dominic Filion, our lead graphics engineer. He's the smart one out of the group. He's the one to make sure the engine can handle all the cool art we put into it. And lastly, we have Phil Gonzalez.
Hello, Blizzard Convention.
Phil's a veteran on the team. He's been here for quite a while, and basically every unit, multiplayer campaign goes through his sweet, lovely hands. All right, so first we're going to talk a little bit about the art style of Blizzard, just to kind of catch you up on our philosophy. We work really hard, we're very passionate about everything, and we want to play in these worlds as much as you guys do. So we work really hard trying to come up with epic ideas. This is really the start of it, like the core concept of what makes a unit cool, what makes the universe cool, what adds to the game itself besides just the gameplay mechanics. The next one is bold shapes. You really need to have a unique silhouette, especially in an RTS when you have a top-down view. It's really hard to see the units. You know, there's 300 Zerglings on screen all over the place. You got to be able to pick out the infester. So having a unique, bold shape that really shows off the unit well is really important. And of course, crisp and colorful textures. You know, we're known for not doing realistic stuff. It's a little more on the flavorful side. You know, lots of color, and again, with the crispness, you can't get too much detail since the units are smaller, because when you zoom out again to the RTS view, it gets kind of busy, so you really need to kind of complement the bold shapes with details, but you can't get too much small stuff in there. And of course, to bring it to life, dynamic animations. Again, you're not going to see like uber realistic motion capture stuff with our animations. We like to do it by hand, keep it kind of stylized, a little bit over the top, and just basically have fun with it. So now on to the multiplayer units. I don't know if you guys have seen them on the floor out there, but we have a bunch of new units for both or all three sides. Now with 5,000% more super badassedness. And some of these units are still a work in progress, but I'm really proud of what we have so far on the art and design side. We've been playing The Office. We've had a lot of fun. The art looks amazing. These guys have done a great job. And it's kind of a fun thing, too, because we work hand in hand with the designers. Sometimes we get certain things from them that say, hey, we need a small unit, and it's got a grappling hook, and it flies. We're like, okay, cool, and we'll kind of go off, we'll start pushing it more. Like, what if it has 2 grappling hooks, or it's got laser grappling hooks, or, you know, instead of flying, it's got, you know, giant legs, and we kind of try and push it back and forth a little bit. Other times, we actually get stuff in that just seems cool to us, and we're like, hey, like, we want a giant robot in the game. Like, the Thor is a great example. We went to the designers and they said, hey, you know, giant robot, it's got huge guns. Like, they're like, what does it do? I don't know. You guys figure it out. It's just cool. Like, who doesn't like giant robots? So that's a good unit. That's a good example of basically them putting in cool stuff on our side and making it work in the game really well on the mechanics side. And actually, some of the stuff you're seeing here today, the design came in recently, so some of the stuff we made literally like 3 weeks ago. In fact, last week we were still doing some tweaks, so it's really fresh. All right, first we'll start off with the Zerg. Heart of the Swarm is a Zerg-centric expansion, and one of the new units is actually called the Viper. Now this is about 3 years old actually. It's a development video we had internally. We really wanted to have a cool snake-like motion for one of the characters. And again, we didn't know what for. We said, hey, that's a cool concept for Zerg. And so we animated this guy, we put him in, we were playing around with it, and it came down to, we just didn't have the tech to really pull it off so it'd be dynamic when it moved around in the level. And so we said, okay, we put it on the shelf and we'll come back to it. And you know, luckily a couple years later, we get to put it back in. And so we started reconcepting the overall look of it. And you can see Sammy, our art director, drew this. And at the beginning, it was a little more of a kind of a scorpion look, kind of a muta tail in there. More concepting, kind of flesh out the colors and some of the details. You see the changes in the head and the arms. And then you have the final model, which looks amazing, I think. And you're not going to see it animated here. I'll show you in a minute because it's dynamically animated, but this guy is the epitome of a cool, creepy Zerg. Like, you don't even want to click on it. It's so disgusting. And that's what we strive for, basically. Here's a couple of them in motion. You can see how their tails work. And when you click around and do 360s with them, they'll actually follow you perfectly. And, of course, a lovely environment from part of the campaign. Little sneak peek. Next, we have the Swarm Host. This guy's really cool. Again, an older concept here. At the beginning, we weren't sure if he was going to be a flyer or if he was going to be on the ground, so we kind of just went with either concept. He ended up being a ground-based unit. And you can see here he's got a very distinct silhouette. Again, really strong shapes. He stands out against everything else in the game with that huge pad on his back and the egg sacs. A very structured, thick kind of dinosaur build for his motion, because as you'll see here, he's kind of a slow mover. And you see they come in, basically they burrow and they unleash these little critters called locusts, and they just tear up your bases. So Terran players are going to hate them. Next we have the Terran. Any Terran fans in the audience? See, they're just OP. You guys are just cheesy. Come on. All right, the first unit actually is a revisit of an older unit, the Hellion. So you can see we changed it up a little bit. It's got a new paint job on it, got some flames. And then, I don't know, by the way, it turns into a robot, which is super cool. Again, we can tell we like robots. This guy, again, strong shape. He's got the turret on top. When he transforms in this mode, it's almost like a siege mode. He's a little bit slower. He's tougher, though, and he's got a shorter range on his flamethrowers. And he's got those awesome shields on his arms that help deflect the damage. Here's some in the base transforming. And basically, this is the last thing a Zerg player sees before they GG. Here we have the Warhound. Again, more robots. Some of the themes of the new Terran units are a little more high-tech than some of the older, kind of more junky stuff. Here's a great picture of everything you love about Terrans. It's got fire, it's got a huge cannon, rocket missiles, laser explosions, and of course, a pig decal on the shield. Gotta have that. Here's the actual model, looking amazing. And again, we try to get a unique silhouette. We have sharp angles that try and get all the specular highlights in the model. The guys did a great job texturing this one. Here's a group of them, totally decimating some Protoss. And again, these units are all playable on the floor, so I encourage you guys later on to stand in the hopefully short line and test them out yourself. And last, for the Terrans, we have the Shredder. This guy, again, this is another kind of like a napkin concept. Sometimes we have high detailed concepts like you saw in the Warhound. Sometimes we just need a very simple, quick idea, and then we kind of hand it off to the modeler and the texture, and they kind of run with it, kind of add their own flavor to it, and we kind of let everybody contribute a little bit so they have some ownership. This guy looks a little bit like an old spider mine. He's got 4 legs, he's robotic, he walks around. Here's his mobile mode right here, where he walks around. He's kind of a cute little guy. But what he does, basically, he burrows into the ground, and then he pops up his pad on top, and a huge energy shield comes out, or energy shockwave, basically, and just decimates anything. So Zerg players are going to hate this guy. And again, all these animations and everything are very in flux. My favorite race, the Protoss. There you go. So we did a couple interesting things. For right now, we're actually taking out the carrier and the mothership on the multiplayer side, and it's going to replace him with this guy. So he's going to be the new capital ship. Really large, huge, and you can see here another kind of rough concept, really trying to capture the sleek shapes, almost organic shapes of the Protoss. And you can see on the top, it kind of shows a little bit of the weapon system, which is important because, as you see here in the final model, like that energy ball is huge. It really becomes part of the ship itself with the silhouette. It basically launches that thing out and takes out, massive mutas. This guy has an interesting history too because he started off as a Dark Templar theme, so he had more of the silver and green colors, and we're trying to balance out the armies just visually. And then, we decided, hey, screw it, he's going back to typical Protoss, traditional gold colors. And often that happens during development. We'll switch back and forth, test different things out. Here you can see him totally decimate a whole bunch of mutas. Yeah, I love this guy. Now here's another old development video. This guy back in the day was called the Star Relic, and it's probably about 3 or 4 years ago. And we just wanted something cool. We didn't know exactly what it did. Just, hey, awesome, robotic, techno-magical looking Protoss thing. And there was no role for it basically in the Army. So every time the designers would be like, hey, we're going to put in this flyer or this caster, I'd be like, oh, dude, come on, use this, and I'd pull it back out every time. It was almost like a joke. And so finally, there is a role for it as a caster in the Heart of the Swarm expansion. And so here's the final model, again, looking much better. And it's interesting, this guy actually started off with the gold colors at first, and once we switched the Tempest over back to gold, we said, well, we got to have one Dark Templar new unit in there, so we switched this guy over to silver. I'd like to say we spent a lot of time thinking about it, and it was this huge deliberation, and we're very smart about it, but it took about 5 minutes, and we're like, yeah, that looks cool, ship it. So this guy's really fun. He's actually kind of a harassment unit with these cool spells, like he can put shields on your minerals so you can't mine, so that's going to be pretty evil. Here we go, the Replicant. This guy's awesome. Again, talking about very unique silhouette and structure. He goes around the battlefield. He just, it's a robotic unit, so we don't have to worry too much about the cockpit or seating in it or like how it all works. I mean, we try and be somewhat, form follows function, but this guy just looks cool. We're like, screw it, he looks cool, put him in there. Basically, his role is he'll take any other unit he sees on the battlefield and turn into it. So like right here, you can see him stealing the identity of the siege tanks, and he's a permanent siege tank now. So that means the Protoss players can now have any other unit that's on any other race, which is very crazy. But I love that. Cool, well now I'm going to turn you over to Steve Provost to talk about environments.
Hi, I'm Steve Provost, a 3D artist on StarCraft II. I'm going to show you a few videos of some of the new tile sets that we're working on, and then talk about some of the philosophies that we had going into this project. So here is a new installation in Heart of the Swarm. We really wanted them to feel unique from those in Wings of Liberty. So most of the environments in Wings of Liberty have a lot of dirt and a lot of grit in them. So what we wanted to try to do with this one was make a cleaner environment. But you lose a lot of detail on the surface when you take away that dirt. So what we decided to do was add reflective environment mapping to add that missing detail. And it really makes the surfaces shine. Here's a new lava tile set. We really wanted the Terran elements in this tile set to feel rooted to the ground in such a way that it could survive this hostile environment with all the flames and the lava. And you can see some smaller frequency details and small models around the edges. It makes it look a little more alive and occupied by the Terran. There's also a new set of custom walls there with ramps as well. And those are pathable by some of the smaller units of the game. So those are completely modular, and modders are going to have a good time making interesting mods with those. This is another man-made tile set. It's floating in the thick atmosphere of this alien planet. We added a lot of environment animations, a lot of construction equipment and stuff to make this feel like a functional base for the Terran. We also added some really massive cannons there in the background. It makes it look a little more defended and kind of shows off the scale of this massive base. And all of the art in Heart of the Swarm is brand new. We really use very few assets from Wings of Liberty. So I think the overall quality of the art has increased dramatically. Okay, here's a new ice tile set for Heart of the Swarm. Sammy, our art director, really wanted to add a cool ice tile set for the fans. And so we spent a lot of time doing different iteration on ice and different styles and shapes and different shaders. And one of our artists came up with a really cool model, which was blue, cyan, and purple. And we really liked it, so we applied it to all the assets on the stage. But it was a little too saturated, so we decided to dial it back and add some environment mapping on it. And it really brought it into the StarCraft universe and gave it that crisp look that you see today. Okay, so one of the most notable improvements to the art in Heart of the Swarm is our distinct color palettes per tile set. In Wings of Liberty, we would make a lot of assets that would be used across different tile sets. And so if you saw pipes on Braxis Alpha, you would see the same exact pipes on Valhalla. But in Heart of the Swarm, we made every asset handcrafted for that tile set. So it really gives that crisp color scheme. It makes it unique for each environment. So every single world feels like a new experience, and it really gives a specific mood to the player. So while we're working on these assets, our technical artists and our graphics programmers are working hard at giving us new tools and new technology to make more versatile shaders. And so when we need a new material like clean Terran paneling or Protoss glass or Protoss pipes, we'll do a bunch of tests and decide what looks really good and apply that to all the assets on the stage. And it makes these stages look more unique and feel more original to the user. So one of the biggest hurdles we have in doing environment art for RTS games is the procedural generation of cliffs and terrain. So we don't want the terrain, the cliffs, and the environment assets to look like different elements. We want them to feel less modular and feel more like one solid piece of artwork. So we made a conscious effort to create these custom cliff models to sort of make the world look a lot more natural and feel like one piece of art. So here's one of the more larger assets that you're going to encounter in the campaign. This was actually modeled as a high poly model and then baked down to a low poly mesh that you're going to see in game. It's got a bunch of really cool shapes and some fun effects on it. So here's the rock towers, the collapsible rock towers that you're going to encounter in multiplayer. We made all of our rocks in Heart of the Swarm as high poly meshes. We sculpted them and then baked them down to the low poly mesh that you see in game. And this gave a bunch of advantages. Number one, we can make these rocks look much more rigid, and since they have unique UVs, we can actually bake in the highlights and the shadows into each rock, so you don't lose any detail when it goes into the shadow, like you do with some of the rocks in Wings of Liberty. Here's a large Protoss structure that you're going to encounter in the campaign, and the effects in this asset actually would not have been possible without the new tech that we got for Heart of the Swarm. So on that note, I'm going to pass it over to Dominic, and he's going to talk about some of the new improvements to the engine.
Hello, BlizzCon. I'm Dominic Filion. I'm a lead software engineer for the graphics team on StarCraft II. And what I want to share with you today is how the graphics in StarCraft II has actually evolved over time. Now, does anybody in the audience remember seeing screenshots of the first StarCraft in the alpha version? Anyone? Yeah. So if you remember, we got some of those here. Back in those days, everybody hated that. That was the left side picture, right? So everybody hated the picture. And we had to go back and actually change the look of it and actually make it look much better. So you might be wondering, did we go through the same process with StarCraft II? And yes, we did indeed. So what I've been doing is for the past 6 years, I've been secretly stashing old builds of the game on my personal computer just for this day. And today, for the first time, I'm going to show you very old footage of how StarCraft II came about and how it looked in the early beginnings. So let's go back to the archives and see what that looks like. So we're going to go back a few months after I started working at Blizzard, and that was June 2005. This was build 385. This was the intro screen. And what you'll see is actually a little bit embarrassing because it's pretty primitive. So we started with the StarCraft I units. We didn't have any new units. This was the early versions of the models. The UI obviously needed a bit of alignment work to actually get it properly working. And we didn't have a sound engine yet, so no sound in the video. So all we did at that point was just getting the old StarCraft I stuff actually working. And the explosions were absolutely awesome. So if we move a bit further off, that was a year later, 2006. So now we actually put in something that would look more like a genuine model of the game. We had a cliff system that was put in, some basic lighting. We were kind of experimenting with the Terrans at this point. I think, let's see, what did we have? We were putting in some new units, if we're going to see in a few minutes. Yeah, it's not there, but we put in the particle systems, which would allow us to show actual blood coming out of marines and all that kind of stuff. So that was our first version of that. And then this was a couple months later. So this is when we actually started putting in new units. And some of the units you'll see today have actually been either heavily modified or they're actually gone from the game. So there's the Guardian in there, there's the Cobra that has changed, the Thor was much bigger back then. So we put in some special effects and some beams at that point, and the explosions were actually a little bit improved. At that point, where were we? I think, oh yeah, we started working on the Protoss, the early version of the pylon energy grid we put in. We had our first experiments. You can see some Dragoons that were still in the game back then. The Purifier, which is one of the units that we subsequently killed. And this is what Creep looks like when you put a bunch of programmers in a room without an artist to actually give them direction. But we had our first version of the Creep at a prototype stage at this point. Moving on, 2006 in October, this is when we put in the glow tech in the game and the high dynamic range colors. So we started putting beams as well and all sorts of cool effects and actually getting something that looks a lot closer to what we have today. What you see here is actually the old Archon, which was much bigger, and you could actually spawn it by just merging 3 Templars together. This is the mechanic we subsequently changed. So this is an actual much closer version of the Creep that we actually put in later. If you look in the video, you'll see it was actually reflective. This is something we changed afterwards because it was kind of slow. The Creep was pretty slow, and it was kind of distracting to actually see twice the same unit on the same screen. But at that point, we had really started to dial down the look of the Zerg and the Theron and the Protoss, and actually getting something that looks a lot closer to what we have today. Does anybody remember seeing the announcement of StarCraft II in Korea, like the early videos? This is the build that we use, and this was the first time we showed it to public. Blizzard actually shipped the whole team to Korea, and we had this huge stadium to actually see how the people would receive the game, and it was the most exciting moment of my life, really. This is July 2007. We put in foliage on the terrain, as you can see, so we were starting to really polish up the maps and actually give them a more finished look. This is when we put in the line of sight blockers, the first time we experimented with that mechanic. And then a few months later, October 2007, we put in scorch marks underneath buildings, kind of little polish items to really kind of anchor buildings to the terrain and actually give the final look for buildings. So at that point, we were actually quite close to the look of the game that we have today. But this was 2007, so you're probably wondering what the hell have these guys been doing in just 3 years between shipping? Well, we optimized the game, and we fixed some bugs, and we worked on the single-player campaign. That was 2008. And then in 2009, we optimized the game some more, and we fixed more bugs, and we worked on the campaign some more, until 12,000 builds later, we shipped version 1 of StarCraft that we have today. So let's move on to Swarm. Anyone here play on the lowest quality setting for graphics in StarCraft II? Yeah, I hate you guys. So we're going to improve that. It looks terrible. It looks terrible on low, but we're actually going to improve that and not make it any slower than it is. We're actually trying to make that, and pro players love playing on low, so we're going to actually focus on that. How many Zerg players do we have here today? So for you Creep lovers, we're going to actually improve the look of the Creep quite a bit. So as you can see, the Creep is actually growing on the buildings of your enemy, so you can actually infest his buildings and really show him you're really corrupting the heart of his base. Another thing we're going to be working on, there's a lot of units in the Zerg race that have snake-like movements. So we've built this animation system that will automatically generate all these snake movements. This is something the modders could use if you want to make your own train of Marines or whatever that looks like a snake. We also have rebuilt the physics engine from scratch. So now you can humiliate your enemy in a lot of various ways. In slow-mo, nice. So modders could also use the physics to do whatever they need. If, for example, you want to make a marine rain spell.
It's raining men.
So these are just some of the new features we're going to put in Swarm for you guys, and I really hope you enjoy them. Thanks.
Just give it all to me. Hi guys, I'm Phil Gonzalez, and I'm going to talk to you guys about what we've been doing on StarCraft Dota, or Blizzard Dota, I should say.
Fired.
Blizzard Dota is a lot of Hey. Blizzard Dota is a lot of fun for us because we focused on the military campaigns of StarCraft II, and we were really focused on having large armies, massive amounts of units, and we weren't focused on heroes. So Blizzard Dota gives us the opportunity to shift that focus and actually play around on the other end of the spectrum, where we have really cool, polished hero characters, among other things. One of the things we're trying out, and you'll know there's a difference between the map from last year and this year, is that we're playing around with the cyber world idea. And the main idea is that this world is a gaming planet, and all the heroes are being abducted or incorporated to provide entertainment. The world we're trying to experiment with will also have a replication of terrain in areas we're familiar with, so maybe we'll see Sanctuary and other worlds from Blizzard universes. Another thing we changed from last year was the creeps. These guys are the numerous minions you'll be fighting as your heroes. We really wanted to imply a simplicity in their design. They're mass-produced, they're pieces of junk. You're going to kill them by the thousands, so who cares how intricate they are? Basically, we use really simple shapes, circles, pipes, stuff like that. We carried this theme on through some of the Mega Minions. This is going to replace the minion that we currently have, which I think is an Ultralisk in the BlizzCon build. But this will be there in that place, and it shares some of the same elements. It still looks like it's mass-produced, it's a simple thing to build, but it's also been kind of overbuilt in some areas to imply that this thing is going to wreck house. Take it out. Basically, the main goal with the minions is that they're kind of unremarkable. We want the heroes to be the focus of the game. We want the minions to be completely expendable. So going through with the cyber world theme, our main focus of Blizzard Dota is making the heroes shine and everything else just complement their goal in what you're doing in the game. Another interesting aspect of the cyber world is that we're going to be blending Blizzard worlds into it. For this build, we decided to bring in the ogres from the World of Warcraft universe. And so we have the mercenaries who have taken very quickly to the technology of the future, and they've equipped themselves with guns, armor, and the concept on the right, you'll see, is the Ogre King. It's not ready for BlizzCon yet, but he essentially is a gold pinata. If you find him on the map, kick the crap out of him, he's going to drop a ton of gold, and it's all going to go to your entire team. It's a cool new guy. These are the models we use for the Ogre minions. The cool thing about them is they're really economic models. We essentially made one ogre, and by switching out the weapons between ranged or melee weapons, we can get a lot more variety and utility out of these models. Another benefit is we have custom textures for each of these, and the textures make distinct differences on the models, such as tattoo patterns or even the completely different skin tone on the Ogre Mage. This is just a quick example movie, and if you're in the last panel you saw, the way the ogres work is they have camps around the map, and when you defeat them, they'll swear allegiance to your team, essentially replacing some of the mass-produced minions with sturdier, more honed fighters that will actually fight for you. It's pretty cool. And it takes a while. Just keep watching.
It's hammer time.
Man. This is the Goblin Shop. We knew that we were going to be redoing the item shop, and we decided what would be a good fit for an item merchant. Naturally, the goblins came to mind once again. They're prolific, they'll pop up anywhere, they're like cockroaches or whatever. So basically, they've taken over the cyber world's merchant needs, and they haven't really adapted that much. It's still the same shoddy goblin construction we know and love. It's a fun piece, and it really adds a lot of flavor to the serious tone of the cyber world. This is a concept for Lord Order. When we showed Blizzard Dota last year, instead of Lord Order, we had a King Tower as the final objective. We decided we could add a lot more character to the game by adding Lord Order, implying he's more of a galactic overlord and that he's part of the acclamation of the heroes that are fighting. We wanted to give him really powerful, sweeping kingly gestures to imply that this guy is badass until he gets beaten up by 5 heroes. When we started developing Blizzard Dota, we started with things we already had. Kerrigan was an ideal candidate. She appeared in Wings of Liberty, and she essentially already had every function we needed to start making heroes. We just simply adapted her by giving her more team color so she had a better read from the game view camera. We also started experimenting. The Dwarven Marauder is an ideal situation where we decided we could blend the Warcraft and the StarCraft universe into this character. The Marauder proportions are really close to Dwarven proportions, and by adding weapons, the spears on the back and the helmet, we got a really interesting character that we blended up. And we're definitely going to try experimenting in appropriate places with this more often. Nova is a key example of something the designers were really interested in because they wanted to see a ghost character. They had a lot of ghost abilities already implemented, and they said, we're going to use a ghost. And as artists, we asked if we could implement something a bit more visually pleasing than the standard ghost we have in the Terran army. And you'll see in some other slides, we would like to use iconic characters whenever possible, even if we're defining a hero by a basic role. Tassadar is kind of an ideal example of this. The initial build of Tassadar, he was a sentry, just a regular old robotic sentry. Not that cool to look at, and we definitely liked the Protoss vibe. We thought, it feels Protoss-like, so let's pick a better Protoss character to represent it. Luckily, we had Tassadar from Wings of Liberty, and all we had to do really was make a new crest on his back to kind of make him look more epic. So now we have a new hero, Uther. Uther was another hero that design had established early on that they wanted a healing class. They really wanted a healing-centric character, and through discussions, it seemed like the Paladin kit would be fitting best for him, and it's kind of appropriate that the first Paladin character in the Warcraft lore is also the first Paladin in StarCraft Dota, representing the healing classes. Arthas, on the other hand, was a different story. Arthas is awesome. Like, let's just put him in the game. That's what we said, and they had no idea what they were going to do. There was no design agenda for a Death Knight, but the art was there, and the art had a lot of potential. So, in a kind of backwards fashion, the art came first, and then design decided to make some really cool Death Knight-centric abilities to make Arthas work. Thrall, once again, shifts over where they had a shaman character type. They said, we want to use Bloodlust, we want to use Totems, we want to use Lightning Shield. Naturally, we decided, let's use our most well-known shaman character, and we picked Thrall. When we picked Thrall, though, we already had a character that was an orc, the Blade Master. And so we decided to make Thrall a bit more distinct and change his silhouette by mounting him on a Cyberwolf. The Cyberwolf and Thrall initially were the same thing. Thrall was just mounted on a wolf. He didn't move faster. There was no gameplay functionality behind him being on a wolf. This was interesting. It's a different physical read. It's a different silhouette. It's unique. Unfortunately, what we discovered, and we learned this lesson a long time ago as well, and it came back, is that when you create a character on a mount, you have to scale it down. So the character on the mount has to have the same pathing footprint and take up the same area as a character on foot. The bummer is Thrall becomes very small. He doesn't look epic anymore. He doesn't look like a war chief. It doesn't feel like Thrall. Why should we use Thrall? We had this problem in Warcraft 3 as well. It essentially came back to haunt us, and we really had concerns about this. We wanted it to look epic. So we discussed with the designers and voiced these concerns. We asked if the mount system could be better integrated into the game. They had already had things they were talking about with the boots, and they decided, well, maybe we can take boots out of the game, and we can make the mount an actual part of the game design. And that's kind of how it came around, is we wanted to see Thrall looking his best mounted, and we wanted the mount to have more significance. And this is kind of the best of both worlds, because now we have Thrall mounted up. The mount actually signifies the fact that he'll be moving faster and has a role, and plus we can dismount Thrall, and he looks just as cool stomping around smashing heads. Finally, we have the D3 Witch Doctor. I was really, really excited to see this character get put in the game because this is the first time we've incorporated Diablo universe characters into Blizzard Dota. And this guy has a bit more of a subtle blending of universes. You can see he has a troll witch doctor head as his familiar totem, as well as a Zergling skull on the back of his hip. We're really looking forward to mixing these universes more. There's a lot of potential here. It's going to be a lot of fun. This is a character that we have in the works right now. It's a Goblin Tinker. The Goblin Tinker is going to be a construction-based hero. He's going to build all sorts of turrets and launch pads, stuff like that. His ultimate ability is his armor. He jumps inside of it and it becomes a Goblin-style marine suit. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're basically making a Goblin SCV, and we'll see how it plays out. We're also looking into hero skins, hero variations. All the heroes we had last year, they're coming back. We just wanted a smaller amount of heroes for BlizzCon. But you can guarantee that we're going to explore things like alternate costumes, putting stitches in a marine armor instead of a Zerg carapace suit. Things like that. We're still deciding what we're going to do, but there's a lot of potential here. For example, we can make any of these characters, or any of these characters. The sky's really the limit. I mean, I don't know what we're going to end up doing, but there's a ton of really cool universe characters that we can pick and really make Blizzard Dota unique. Finally, sadly, this model was not prepared for BlizzCon. Stupid, I know. But Illidan is really, really cool, and he's on deck right now. They're concepting out his hero kit, and you can see from the animations coming up, he's going to be a really, really fun hero, and it's going to be cool seeing him and Arthas square off. So thank you for your time, Blizzard Convention. I guess we're going to Q&A.
Hi guys. In the art we've seen so far of Kerrigan as a human, we've seen her in her suit that glows blue and glows orange. Is there a significance to those colors? And in the Blizzard manual here for BlizzCon, it shows her arm transforming back into Sarah Kerrigan as the Queen of Blades. Can you talk about that at all?
We can't really talk about that stuff without giving away any kind of story hits. So we just have to say stay tuned, and yeah, I mean, obviously the whole expansion is focused on Kerrigan, so we try to do as much as possible to make her stand out and be unique and add even more depth to her character, but we can't really tell any details.
Your observations are not in vain. You're onto something.
Hi, question about the engine. You talked about making low quality looking better than before. Are you doing anything to make higher quality for people who own high-end graphics cards look better? And in a related question, what are you guys looking for in DX11, and what do you think of using that?
Yeah, we're always looking to expand on every quality level. So there's certainly things that we're going to improve. So the cinematic scenes in particular would use these special effects on Extreme that we add in a patch. So we're kind of looking if we can actually transport some of these advanced features from the cinematics to the in-game stuff. So we're kind of still deciding that out, but there's definitely going to be improvements there. And then as far as DX11, we've been kind of looking into it. I've worked on DX11 porting the game. It takes a while, and we can still achieve a lot with DX9 still, and that everybody has access to this. But yes, we're definitely looking into this, though I couldn't give you exactly when that would happen, that we would move over to DX11.
I saw that there were going to be a lot of new mechanical units. Can you go into some detail about the drivers of those vehicles?
Phil, you want to handle this?
Are you referring to the Hellion and the Merc Commander and stuff like that?
Yeah.
The Merc Commander, the Warhound, sorry, we've changed the name a couple times. The Warhound is more of a seasoned, kind of surly looking, higher up military figure, so he'll have a bit of the battlecruiser captain flavor, but light. And I believe the new Hellion is going to kind of be a bit more of the same, but a little sexed up and stuff like that. And the Shredder is essentially just a drone robot, so I'm sure we're going to get something very similar to the Mule portrait. I don't know yet.
So, and for the Protoss units, like the ships?
The Protoss ships, we definitely have a couple new Protoss portraits we've made that have Protoss pilots. One of them, we're looking to put another female character in the cockpit of one of the ships to get more female Protoss presence. And the replicant is essentially a robot, so we're probably going to have something similar to the Phase Prism portrait for that.
I just want to thank you guys for showing us the tech behind some of this and how long it takes for a game to come. I actually don't have a question. I just want to say thank you for everything that you've done and put into this game so we can play it.
What's your name?
Craig.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks, Fred.
Thanks.
All right, I actually have two questions. The first question is if anybody here has been following the development of Wings of Liberty before that was released, the carrier was replaced by another unit called the Tempest. You know, exactly somewhat like the one that you have here, except it's now a carrier, or it was back then a Dark Templar carrier. My question is, or my first question is, what exactly inspired you to shift away from the recolored carrier Tempest that you were going to use back then versus the half Corsair, half Star Relic model that you're using now?
That's a great question. I'm glad you actually noticed the old Tempest. It's a kind of funny story. We were first putting everything together. We had the press come out, and we said, hey, cool, here's our new units. And the Tempest was one of them, where we said, okay, you know, we like the carrier. It's a great classic unit. It's one of my favorite ones. But like, we need to put a new spin on him for, you know, for the sequel, obviously. So we made the DT version. He had like little shurikens instead of interceptors. And it was in the build for about 3 weeks. And by the time the magazine came out with all the new previews, he wasn't even in the game anymore. So I think one of the reasons was that unit was still a carrier in a lot of ways, where you could build specific units, and it kind of, I mean, it looked the same. It was just the whole DT spin on it. In this case, we're like, okay, let's get a totally different mechanic, and it really replace them, you know, wholeheartedly instead of just a little cosmetic twist.
Yeah. And my second question is, how big of a backlash do you think you're going to get from taking out the carrier again, because it didn't work out so well the first time, so maybe a second time will be the charm?
You know, I have a lot of faith in our designers, and we play a lot of games internally, you know, testing this stuff out, and it's a blast. I mean, I've heard repeatedly, like, this is the best StarCraft has ever been, so I just have a lot of faith that we'll continue testing it. We'll go through the whole beta phase, of course, get all your guys' feedback, and again, please check it out on the floor yourselves, and give us as much feedback as possible.
Hi, do you guys know if map makers are going to have access to that physics engine when we're making custom abilities?
Yeah, you're going to get access to all that. And the previous panel had the Star Tools thing, so you'll be able to make your own models, rig them up, and even like take different models and actually build, like the Terratron, right? The Terratron was kind of a building different models. You could probably mesh a whole ragdoll kind of setup with that kind of thing.
Hi. So I know that StarCraft II is optimized for dual core, and I think that's because the game's kind of old. Like, the design's been going on for a long time. I was wondering if Heart of the Storm's going to be optimized for tri-core, dual core, or quad core.
Yeah, we actually didn't specifically target dual core. It's just that happened to be how it kind of balanced out, right? And there's actually more than 2 cores, but yeah, the third and the fourth one is actually very low. So this is a constant process. It's not necessarily just going to be Swarm. Wings of Liberty, we're going to patch it up, and as we make performance upgrades, Wings of Liberty will get the same thing. So the answer is yes, we're going to target more cores. As we just need to kind of recode some of the engine to take advantage of that.
Thanks.
Yeah, one of the cool things I like about the Protoss is the Dark Templar unit, and he has 2 separate models. And I was wondering, in the future, do you think that could be something a little bit more common, spread throughout all of the other different races?
When we built the Dark Templar, we realized that the potential to do duplicate units like that was partially because he's cloaked, and he's a rather vague unit. So your first visual read, you're like, oh, okay, I'm seeing something cloaked, so it's Dark Templar-like. A lot of our other units, we can't take those advantages because if we change the physique too much, it doesn't look like what it was a variation of. If we change the Marine too much and change the shoulder pad shapes and the other proportions, people start going like, well, is it a Marine or a Marauder? And we have to be really careful in doing that. The benefit of the Dark Templar being cloaked basically gave us free reign to say, well, you only see him at 50% opacity anyways, so if he's slightly different shaped and has a different look, we can kind of get away with it because the cloak will tie it all together. It's really tricky, and believe us, we want to do that stuff. We don't get too many opportunities to do that without breaking the game. You can even see it with mercenary units and Wings of Liberty. If we use mercenaries and mix them in with the regular units, it would it'd start getting really muddy really fast.
What about something a little bit more simple, like separate textures, where like there'd be, like on a Terran Marine, he'd have battle damaged armor, or maybe some different writing or something on there?
On that front as well, we've done texture variations like that. If you open up the Goliath in Wings of Liberty, he has a few different variations. The main factor is, though, our game has to have a readability in multiplayer because it's so competitive, and design is really leery of us making those alterations because the pros have to see the exact same Marine they always see. And even slight variations, they said, let's not even risk that. And yeah, there's a lot of potential there. I'd love to see it, but unfortunately, we have to make a really tight game for the pros and for a design sensibility that art-wise we have to compromise.
So I haven't had a chance to play Blizzard Dota yet, so if this has been addressed, I apologize. But when you click on the heroes, will they have any speech, or when they attack, say, have some kind of vocal charge?
No music, no, I'm just kidding. Actually, we're spending a lot of time right now with the sound department making some really cool dialogue for them. So they'll have all the so-called piss lines where you click on them a bunch of times to get funny things. They'll have all their typical unit acknowledgments. It's probably hard to hear on the floor right now. They have the headphones, but we have some of that stuff in. There's a whole list I just saw the other day of really cool interactions. So like when you're running down the lane, the witch doctor might look over, or not look, he might say over to Nova, hey, when's your game coming out? You know, things like that, and make fun of it. So we can actually have fun within the universe as well. And I think just the fact that we have all three universes and all our past ones to work from just gives us that more ammunition for having cool dialogue. So it's definitely coming.
Why are the wow, that's weird. Why is the Tempest and the Carrier mutually exclusive from a gameplay point of view? It seems like they have very different. It seems like they have different roles.
You know, that's a good question. We needed a designer. Yeah, you know, I can't answer that too much. I mean, I just know that they put a lot of thought into it because we wouldn't just, you know, offhandedly, you know, take out anything from the game, especially one that's been in there since the old original StarCraft. So we're still testing a lot of things out. So it's not to say this is final, but as of right now, they felt that was the best way to utilize it. And it could be, I'm speculating a little bit here, but it could be because some of those things don't get used as much in tournaments, and so they want to try and make things that are more practical and actually get used more often.
Yeah, we need a designer to answer that. I could tell you how to program them.
I figured you would need a designer. I just thought I might as well ask.
I just want to ask a question elaborating on what you said about the voices. Would the units also be casting jives over to the opposite team? Like say Illidan and the Lich King were fighting in the same lane. Would they talk to each other and, you know, throw jabs?
I'm not sure exactly what the plan is, but it's definitely possible from a tech point of view, and so I'll definitely bring that up with them. I think it's easily doable, so we'll see.
Yeah, they actually are, from what I saw last, is they're planning on doing that where Arthas and Illidan would be like, I thought I killed you. And so the flavor is definitely there. There's a lot of cool stuff coming up with interaction.
We still have time for more questions if anyone wants to jump in line.
I just wanted to see if there's any plans to change some of the burrow movement animations. I saw the Baneling burrow move, and it's kind of...
What are you saying, dude? Come on. You're calling us out?
Yeah, it's just the Baneling.
Don't be a hater.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. I mean, we're always refining the look of the game. I mean, we actually go through so much iteration. For every animation we do, we probably throw out 2 or 3. So, you know, it's not final. We'll keep working on it.
I like the ultra.
Thanks.
I'm wondering if anyone on the team has put special focus into optimizing either Wings of Liberty in Patchwork or Heart of the Swarm for OS X so that it doesn't melt my computer.
That's a feature.
So we have a separate Mac team actually handling those, and they're currently mourning Mr. Jobs. But I don't know, I'd have to ask them. I can definitely pass the message that, what's your name again?
Dan.
I'll tell them Dan is suffering, and hopefully they'll be able to do something about that.
We noticed that in WoW, the dances, they're inspired by something, but is some people's art, like, a certain Kerrigan or anybody, referred to a certain face in Blizzard or something like that, where it's funny, or do you have any funny stories about that or things like that?
I don't know. You got any?
I think there's a few slash dances in Dota, or Blizzard Dota, where we reference like the rerun dance for the Abomination, a few things like that. We have an animator who really likes to look at funny reference for things like that.
Hello, my name is AJ. I was just wondering, were you guys thinking about adding in, let's say, Archon for a tank unit in Dota? I know there wasn't a per se hero for the Archon since I think 1, but I was wondering if that crossed your mind at all.
The hero agenda is going to be really interesting, and like I said, we're still developing it in a sense, and we do not know where we're going to draw the line between giving a character a unique hero or making a hero have a variation. For example, taking the Abomination and making him maybe look like the Butcher from Diablo. So we're still deciding where all those boundaries are going to be, and we definitely recognize there's a lot of really key characters, and yeah, an Archon hero would be awesome, and maybe it'll get its own unique hero. Maybe it'll be a skin and be like, check out my siege tank, it looks like an Archon. What? So we don't know yet. I mean, we're definitely experimenting, and it could be really cool. We'll see what happens.
Hey guys, I didn't have a question until you were talking about like the specific key things that they say to each other in the lane or like when they're fighting and stuff. Just like a light suggestion, you could do like death ones too, because like the funniest part of like League of Legends is when they die and they do something all crazy. Maybe like if Arthas killed Illidan, he says something like "I still hate you" or I don't know, like
That's
death
totally
voices.
Cool. Yeah, I can see that. That's a good idea.
Hey, I was playing Zerg in StarCraft II Heart of Swarm, and I noticed that the icons for roach speed and burrow movement were swapped. When do you guys plan on changing that?
Oh man, that one came back. I will personally take it up with Samwise again.
Oh, okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
I haven't had a chance to play Blizzard Dota, but I was wondering if some of the original voice actors are on tap to get the voices back for some of the characters you have planned.
Glenn Stafford and I were talking about it outside yesterday, and they definitely want to try and get the actors for Arthas and Illidan, and they're going to make the effort to try and get all those guys back. It's the plan.
Something that always kind of blew my mind with the original game is how the replay files was basically a list of commands and how the engine would kind of parse through that and display the replay. I'm wondering that if during development and all that, if you had any issues or any struggles with getting that all to match up with each consistent replay. Does that make sense?
Do you mean with replays of the older games, or?
No, with replays, like the replay files for multiplayer matches.
Right, I'm not sure I understand. Like
making sure that the replay syncs up with what happened the first time, right? Just making sure the simulation is the same.
Yeah, how the AI kind of parses through the replay file and kind of just shows you what the game was without actually having, a video of the game.
Right. Well, StarCraft is entirely deterministic, right? There's no random factor. So as long as we have all the commands at the proper time, there's really, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's pretty straightforward to rebuild the sequence of everything that happened if you know every single click and every single thing that happened.
I'm just wondering, was there any challenge with producing that AI to be able to, do that? And it seems kind of awesome to me, so.
Yeah, Dave, the AI guy, was hidden in his office for months working on that. So it wasn't, I can imagine it wasn't straightforward, but as far as the specific challenges, you would have to be the one to answer that.
Thank you very much. The game is awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I was wondering with StarCraft Dota how far you're willing to take some of the jokes with like the heroes. Like if you would get permission from say Day 9 to make a Day 9 hero unit, if that proves popular, since they, are part of StarCraft. So many people think of them like an Artosis, tasteless Archon.
I could. I was gonna say I could totally see it. We have one aspect of it that you might not notice on the floor right now is there's stands, like stadium stands. There's lots of fans. There's even like a little TV with a video of the game they're watching. So it kind of feels like a sport. And so I could actually see us making at some point some announcers that are, you know, tasteless and Artosis up there doing that aspect. And then the other part, I'm sure we could probably make that happen.
Yeah, the sessions for references and jokes that I've been in, they get pretty out of hand, and we are definitely looking into Scotty references for the Witch Doctor and the Blade Master saying, I don't think the last samurai would be a Scientologist. I mean, those are just light ones too. Like, it gets really out there and the stuff is coming. We have some pretty good guys putting their heads together on that.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I had a question about unit models. I always thought that one of the things that made Warcraft 3, the custom map editor, such a fertile creativity tool was that there were not only the 4 playable races, but a few dozen creep races. You had an endless menu of unit models you could use. Pretty much anything you wanted to make, there was a model that looked kind of like it. Whereas StarCraft II, it's a bit more focused menu, even with the campaign-only unit models like the Zerg Leviathan, that kind of thing. I was wondering if any time in the future we could see a little bit broader menu of models in the StarCraft II editor.
I definitely agree the palette of StarCraft 2's characters and stuff are a bit more limited than Warcraft, but we're also driving a completely different direction with the story. And essentially we're meeting the needs of the story, and when the story doesn't go to places where we need that diversity, we're simply not going to make it. And the turnaround time for the art we're producing is tremendously longer compared to what we did in Warcraft 3. So we have a lot of limiting factors that unfortunately can't let us appease the need for more variety, but we definitely do like stepping out of those boxes. I mean, half the reason Blizzard Dota is so much fun for us is because we get to switch from a future army game to an iconic hero game. And so when we get more opportunities like that, more art will be produced, and time will tell.
Hey guys, you're doing a really great job. I just want to say that from seeing what you guys have produced. I had some simple questions. When the game launches, do we have to pay for it like DLC, or is it going to be free? And will you continuously release characters that we have to pay for?
Currently the plan right now is to, it's very up in the air. We want to release some form of free version though. And it will be downloadable. It won't be, I don't think we're talking about boxes yet. We might put in the starter edition for one thing, but we're still kind of talking about that stuff. But there are definite plans to make it, you know, free to play in some form. And then we're definitely, it's up to the community how popular it is and how much we support it. So if it takes off, absolutely we're going to support it.
Additionally, when people buy the full version of Wings of Liberty or Heart of the Swarm, there'll be benefits to that. So you can start playing for free, and then just like Alan said, and then when you buy full versions of the game, we'll be doing exclusive Dota stuff for people who actually want to buy the game and get on the ladders and stuff like that.
And does that mean there's going to be a ladder to Dota, Blizzard Dota?
Yeah, we have all the BattleNet features you're used to, or I'd say most of them. We're going to be on there with rankings and matchmaking, ladders, all that stuff.
We have time for one more question.
So first of all, I'd like to thank you for making such an awesome game. I can't stop playing this game even at work, and sometimes my boss just hates it when I keep playing this game.
He doesn't know what's good for you.
Yeah, I know. I tell him I'm a programmer, and I tell him this is good for me because this is really good. It shows there's a lot of polish in what they do. So
you're getting your actions per minute up. That helps you with the programming.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if this question relates to you exactly, but if you bought the collector's edition, you would get a custom skin on the tour. Was wondering if you knew there was going to be a custom skin for this edition of the game, and which unit it might be.
Yeah, I don't think we've talked about that yet internally. I mean, we definitely want to do that. We love giving the fans even more just fun and some just geeky love there, but I'm not sure what details are yet. You guys talked about it?
We've thrown ideas around, but that stuff happens so last minute that I can't give you an answer until we're ready to ship. That Thor pet for WoW probably happened in like 2 days. Last minute, trust me. Super last minute.
How about one last round of applause for our panelists?
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for attending the StarCraft II Heart of the Swarm Art and Technology panel.
Hey,
We have, one more little thing to show you guys.
Please.
Awesome.
We had something, but there.
Oh, here we go. Woo! So here's a little sneak peek from one of the campaign missions.
Nothing's playing on the main screen.
This is Kerrigan before she has her coffee in the morning. I think it's awesome. They did a great job on that. And we can't tell you anything about it, though, so you have to wait till the game comes out. But anyway, thanks again, guys.
Thanks, guys.